We're just over 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, and there has been all sorts of speculation. I feel like more so this year, Wolf, about the Cardinals than in most years. You know, maybe the year they had the first pick and they took Kyler Murray, but other than that, like the Cardinals are not necessarily the team everybody's looking at nationally, but you know, you've said this multiple occasions, they kind of control the draft this year. I think it's them in Chicago, at least at the top.
Yeah. You know, there are many draft evaluators that would tell you right now the draft is going to start with the Arizona Cardinals because number 1, 2, and 3 is most likely going to be a quarterback. And anytime you do that, your desperation, your need for a quarterback, it really isn't where the draft begins. When you look at a position player, that to me is when the draft begins.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen until pick 4.
I guess it could happen at pick 3, maybe, but you feel like even if the Patriots move out of that spot, it's to a team that's taking a quarterback.
Exactly. And that's why, once again, even though somebody might actually go at number 3 as a quarterback, I think there are 4 quarterbacks that are going to go in the top 4.
This is Dan Orlovsky on NFL Live yesterday, and this, before I even play this clip, he's not talking about Matthew Stafford at all in this clip, so that's amazing. But this is Dan Orlovsky talking about what he would do if he were the Cardinals there at number 4.
Number 1, the most important thing this season for the Cardinals is hitting on a bunch of those 6 top 90 picks. Number 2, getting Kyler Murray back on track. Okay, we could sit here and say all we want. Mina just pointed out, the only way to get a rebuild successful is not just acquiring a ton of picks. It's getting really good players, okay? The only way to get that done is to make sure that Kyler Murray starts playing at that, hey, I was the number 1 pick level in the NFL, get him a wideout. All right, we don't get too cute with this if you're Monty Awesome, 4th, their general manager.
Yeah, you know, get him a wideout. I think everyone believes that in the first round, the Arizona Cardinals are going to have a wide receiver. It's just where? Number 4 or number 16 or number 27 or number 23? Where is that going to happen?
Yeah. You know, a couple things he said in there that really, for whatever reason, hit home. There's this thought of like, well, you got to get as many picks as possible. You and I have talked about this. Like, it's the Ravens' philosophy. I like the Ravens' philosophy. They already have 6 picks in the top 90. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, give me the closest thing to a sure thing you can with one of those picks instead of, like, it's like if somebody grants you 3 wishes and you're like, I'm going to trade the third one for 3 more wishes and just keep doing that over and over again, right? Like, at a certain point, take the really good player. And what he was saying right there is something that we've said on the show before. You got to see what Kyler Murray can do. You need to get him truly right. If this is a prove-it year for Kyler Murray and you don't prioritize receiver in a draft where it's the most easy to do it, then what are you really saying to everybody? Now, you can say, hey, Kyler's our guy, but we're not going to give him anybody to throw to, then what are you really saying?
Yeah.
I think they'll come out of this with a good receiver.
No, I think there's no doubt about that. I do believe they're going to give Kyler Murray every opportunity to go out and prove once again that what we saw in the last 4 games. You have to remember, brothers, the last 4 games, the Arizona Cardinals led the National Football League in yards per game. Think about that for a minute.
It's a quarter of the season.
That's a quarter of the season right there. And again, it was half of what Kyler Murray actually played last year. The 8 games that he played. It was half of that. 3-5 with the record overall when they should have been 4-4. And I say that, and I know how ridiculous that sounds. And I reject myself for saying it. But they should have. I mean, if they make a field goal, oh my goodness, that just blew my. Don't get me started.
And then he missed the field goal, and Marvin Harrison Jr. liked the tweet from the NFL that he missed the field goal. And here we are.
I like that right there. But once again, this is an offense that did some things in particular over the last 4 games of the season. Kyler Murray has got to take what he did there and extrapolate that, and the Cardinals want to do the exact same thing and apply it to this season. And that means you better have a wide receiver 1. You better go get a guy. Now, whether that's at number 4 or it's later in the draft, wherever it may be, Brian Thomas Jr., maybe somehow, some way you work it out where you get him somewhere in the middle of the first round or even in the 20s. Who knows? But Monty Ossenford knows he's got to give Kyler Murray options.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the biggest thing. And there's a certain point, I mean, they're going to have their board, right? I mean, the general consensus seems to be Marvin Harrison Jr. on a tier by himself. Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors just below that. Brian Thomas Jr. on his own tier, and then a bunch of other good receivers, but not guys that you can count on to be a number one right out of the gate. And let's be clear, they didn't add anybody in free agency. In fact, they let Hollywood go. So they need to add a number one receiver in this draft that is going to be a number one receiver in week one. Even if they were to go out and add a receiver through free agency after the draft, it's not like there's a number one receiver sitting out there now. So if you want Kyler Murray to succeed, and you really are going to say, okay, let's do this, and this is our guy, but also you got to prove it because it's the NFL, you do have to give him a number one receiver, and you have the means to do it, and there are guys there. So whatever their big board is, whatever that top tier is, I would assume they're going to make sure they get one of those guys off it.
Yeah, once again, it's interesting because when I think of help specifically for Kyler Murray, I think of a true number one wide receiver. I think we all do. I think we can settle on that one. I think of an interior offensive lineman as well, somebody that can play guard or center, somebody who can play that left guard position in particular, knowing you got Will Hernandez and Hilda Froholt, I thought did an excellent job last year for the Cardinals. So I'm good with him at center. I am. I got no problem with that. And then a number 3 wide receiver. Somebody you can go 11 personnel. Somebody you can do this with. 3 wide receivers. You got what I would expect would be your wide receiver 1. You got Michael Wilson. Who's that third receiver going to be? Greg Dortch is a possibility. Now listen, Greg Dortch is classic slot receiver for the most part. A guy who's really quick and got a burst in a short area who can catch the ball and run after the catch. He's a tough dude and a good football player. So I like Dortch there, but those 3 positions, if you really want to help Kyler Murray, wide receiver 1, interior offensive lineman, and a true slot guy, that could be a possession-type receiver.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because it's like you can look at the Cardinals and you can say, boy, they got a lot of needs. They do. They also have a lot of picks. That was by design. Monty came in here and immediately made sure they had 2 first-round picks, and they have a second, and it's a pretty high second, and they have 3 third-round picks. So, yes, is he seemingly prone to trading for more picks? It sure seems that way. And it doesn't mean he won't, but it also doesn't mean he has to because they do already have 6 picks. The bigger thing to me, especially with that number 4 pick, it's like if I have a lottery ticket that's going to win me $500,000, I don't necessarily need to trade it for 3 more scratch tickets. Like if I feel like that first one's going to win, even if it's not, like I'm just taking that one. Here's more from Dan Orlovsky.
We often say, well, trade back. Well, who are you going to trade back with? And what happens if that team becomes really good next year? And all of a sudden, you've got the 29th pick of the draft. You're not going to improve your team that much, that quickly. Marvin Harrison Jr. is rare. He's a very unique talent. I think you sit there and say, let's not overthink this. We made the trade last year to get ourselves in this situation. Go help Kyler Murray and go get a star wide receiver at 4. Stay there. Do not get cute.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree with that right now. And I think, honestly, that's the great thing for the Arizona Cardinals. I think they're in this position right now. It's good to be Monty. And why? Because guess what? You're either going to get a ridiculous amount for the number 4 pick overall, or you're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay.
That's a pretty good spot. You're coming out of the first round of this draft a winner. Almost no matter what, unless and I think the only way they don't is if they get too cute, like Dan Orlovsky just said. If they have internally identified that Marvin Harrison Jr. is as good as everybody else has built him up to be, if that's how they feel internally, your trade offers better be absurd if you want to pry that away from me, because this is what I need. I'm going to trade you for more picks, hoping I get somebody that's half as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, what's the point? But at the same time, up until draft night, if some team wants to come along and be like, hey, we're all going to get fired if we don't get a quarterback, so here's 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder, maybe I'll take your call.
Yeah. The wild card, of course, into all of this is maybe it's Malik Neighbors.
Well,
maybe it's Rome Odunze.
That's yes.
One of those 3, I think I'll be okay. Now, listen, for me, again, I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I do. I'm back to it.
just in time. Welcome back to the danger zone.
I've been all over. It's been a dangerous process for me as well. It has been dangerous. But for me, I'm back in the saddle.
Just in time.
Dude.
Thanks for watching Wolf and Luke. Tap to see more and click the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.